If you're looking for ideas and Band 9 vocabulary for IELTS Speaking Part 2 questions, then come and join me and listen to this interview with Martin from Rock and Roll English. Hello, my friend. How are you? And if you've never seen me before, hello, newbie. How are you? So it's Keith from English Speaking Success and the website, the Keith Speaking Academy. And I'm here, to help you develop your English speaking skills in a fun and professional way, so that if you're taking the IELTS speaking test, you can face the examiner with confidence and ace your IELTS test. Now then, I'm very excited because today I've got an interview with Martin from Rock and Roll English. Now, you may remember, probably not, I did a video with Martin about 3 years ago. It was an IELTS speaking test. He was the candidate, I was the examiner. It's up here. You can go and watch it later. It's an old video, but still very, very useful. Now, today we've come back together and we're going to look at IELTS Speaking Part 2 questions so that we can give you ideas to talk about and lots of vocabulary that you can learn and also use for some of your own answers to these questions. Now, IELTS students will be familiar with the Part 2 question. Basically, it's the long turn where the examiner asks you a question and you have to speak for 1 to 2 minutes. Martin and I are going to ask each other these questions and answer, but we're going to do it in a conversational way rather than an examiner-student way. We're just two people speaking. But you'll clearly see the question and the answer, a follow-up question and the final answer there. And we'll both be answering the questions, so you get 2 for the price of 1. Not bad, eh? Now, this video is a little different because actually I'm also going to test your listening skills. Let's see how good you really are. Let's jump straight in and begin. And here we are with Martin. Hi, Martin. How are you?
Hi, Keith. I'm very well, thanks. How are you?
I'm very, very well. Very, very good. Now, Martin, you're from obviously Rock and Roll English, but I'd like to ask you a few quick fire questions, almost IELTS style, if you like. So what is your full name?
My full name would be Martin James Johnston.
And where are you from?
I'm from Chelmsford, which is now a city, and it's about 30 minutes outside of London. Okay.
And where do you live now?
After 12 years living in Italy, I moved back to my hometown, Chelmsford, 2 years ago now, actually.
Why?
I ask myself the same question every day. Family reasons, but my heart is still in Italy. I love Italy.
Right. And what do you do? Tell us about what you do.
I teach English online. I have a podcast, which is the soul, let's say, of my brand, but I have now also created lots of online courses and run a membership site. So yeah, teaching English online is the simple answer.
Fantastic. Excellent. Good. So those are kind of the IELTS style quickfire questions. We're going to move on and talk a little bit about some kind of Part 2 topics, if you like, in IELTS, but in a very conversational style. Now, the first Part 2 question we look at is, tell me about some bad customer service you have had. Martin is going to answer first, and I'm going to tell you some of the words that he uses, and I want to see if you can spot these words when you listen to him. Now, the first one, simple, is, question. Do we say do a complaint or make a complaint? Make a complaint, right? So when you complain, you can make a complaint. That's the first. The second is agitated. Great word, right? Agitated. Can you say that? Agitated. He says the person was very agitated. It means nervous and angry kind of mixed up together. We also have flustered or ruffled. Great words. The word number 2 then, agitated. Number 3 is shush, to shush somebody. He says, I shushed her. To shush somebody is to go shh, right? Now, in England, it's considered rude to shush somebody. Don't you shush me. It's not a good idea. The fourth word is a phrase, water under the bridge, like the song by Adele, right? But when we say something is water under the bridge, it's talking about an action, usually something bad somebody did to you, but you now want to forget it. It's not important to you. That is water under the bridge. Okay, let's listen to Martin and see if you can spot these 4 words or phrases. So I'm thinking about when we go to restaurants or shops, sometimes we get bad customer service. Can you tell me about a time when you've had bad customer service?
Of course. Unfortunately, I hope my friends in Italy don't dislike me for this, but in Italy, very often the customer service would not be so good. And one time in particular, I had a problem with the bus driver who wouldn't let me on the bus because he said the bus was full. And then he literally threw me off this bus, physically threw me off this bus. So I thought, I'm going to make a complaint about this. So I went to the main office and they said, no, you have to go to the other office. So I went all the way across the city to the other office. And then when I got to the other one, they said, no, you have to go back to the one where you were. So I went back to that one. And then they said, call this phone number. So I said, okay, brilliant. So I went outside, called the phone number, and it said, we are now closed, but we are open from 9 till 5. And this was 11 o'clock in the morning. So I was in the times where it should be open. So I went back in again to speak to the woman, who at this point was very agitated and didn't want to see me. She said, look, I've already told you. And I suppose I did make a mistake there, because as she was talking, I was trying to play the message and I did something quite bad and I shushed her. So she was talking and I instinctively just said like, shh, like listen. And when I shushed her, she was yelling at me very, very loudly in front of a lot of people. So yeah, that's the time I had bad customer service. So in the end, I just had to leave it. I couldn't do anything.
Right. Gosh, that's quite impressive. How did you feel about that whole experience?
Very angry and I felt it wasn't just, because I wanted justice, because the man physically threw me off a bus, which is something that you shouldn't be doing. And I wanted, so that there were consequences for that, but it was just impossible to talk to anyone. So I just had to leave it. There was nothing I could do.
That's so interesting. Did you ever catch that bus again?
I actually did. And because I used to take that bus every day to work, and then I saw the bus driver, and in the end, I apologized to him because I thought otherwise this is just going to be awkward. So I said, oh, like, sorry about the other day. And he was like, no, it's fine, don't worry. And I was thinking, you should be apologizing to me. This should be happening the other way, but never mind. Water under the bridge.
You're very kind.
Exactly.
Okay, now before we watch my answer, again, some vocabulary, and I want to see if you can spot these words. The first one, bland. I said it was completely bland. Bland just means a kind of food is not salty, has no taste, not enough salt. It's bland. Second, curt. If somebody is curt, then they are direct but rude. So instead of saying, would you mind giving me the pen? You say, give me the pen. That's curt, right? The third one is an expression, and I say, this is not on. When we say something is not on, it means it's not acceptable. So something's happened, some kind of behavior, and you say, this is not acceptable. This is not on. Fourth one is I talk about somebody and she was seeing red. To see red is to be very angry. It's a bit like the bull when they see a red cloth, They get angry and charge. To see red. Fifth one, to storm out. We wanted to storm out. You probably know a storm with the rain and the lightning and the thunder. But the verb to storm out is to leave a place very angrily. Let's see if you can spot these words.
What about you, Keith? Have you ever had bad customer service?
I have, and as you're talking about Italy, I'm afraid to say it brings to mind a situation in an Italian restaurant. Now, this was in Manchester, and this was a couple of years ago, but it was an Italian restaurant. And I went there with my brother and his family. We were celebrating, I can't remember if it was my brother's birthday or something similar. So we went there to celebrate, and we went into the restaurant and we ordered some food. We all had kind of different dishes, except two people who had the same dish. But when the food came, I had the fish and it was dry. Two people had the same dish and they looked totally different, and they were different dishes, but should have been the same. And the other person said it was completely bland. So basically we called over the waiter to complain, and he said, okay, I'll speak to the chef. And then there was kind of a long delay. Nothing happened. And so we asked the waiter, what's happening? He said, oh, we're still waiting. So we asked to see the manager. And then the manager came over, didn't apologize, was very curt and almost, angry that we'd disturbed him in his work. And we said, this is just not on. And my brother's wife was seeing red. I mean, she just flew off the handle. She stood up and started shouting at him. And we almost stormed out, but I think she wanted to storm out, but we said, let's just wait, try and keep things calm. And then they changed all the meals, and that was that. But at the end, this funny thing in Britain, when you get the bill, they sometimes automatically give you like 10% service charge automatically. So we had to complain about that because we said the service was terrible. And that was it, really. That was an unfortunate situation. Bad customer service in a restaurant.
Absolutely. So the food came in the end. They made you the food, yeah?
They did change it, and my dish was fine. The other two were fine, but one of them was still not happy, and that was my brother's wife. And I think she just got a grudge. She was just nothing was going to make her happy that evening.
And do you think there is a possibility, because when you complain like this, there is also always a possibility that they do something like spit in your food? Do you think were you very when you were eating, thinking, looking in every corner of the dish?
I think you're right, and I think that's it's strange but unfair, isn't it, that we have to be careful how we complain, because if you upset certain people, they can spit in your food or put extra spice on it or whatever, you don't know. So yes, I wasn't too worried. I think I don't know, but I hope they didn't.
Yeah, exactly. I do believe in Britain there is a much more complaining culture about food. That when I go out, for example, with my mum, she complains every time we get food. It's an absolute nightmare. Whilst when I lived in Italy, I remember complaining about the time a pizza was coming, and I said I ordered a pizza, and then it had taken over an hour, and I said, look, I'm not going to pay for it then. Because in England, they would probably say, okay, don't pay for it, we'll give it to you. And he just said, okay, well, I'm not going to give you the pizza. And then I was like, oh, actually, no, I do want it, because now it's like 11 o'clock at night, and otherwise I'm not going to eat.
Your sunken costs.
Yeah, exactly. And so with the service charge at the end, that must have caused some problems as well.
Yeah, they scrubbed it in the end.
Right, oh, they did. Okay.
We refused to pay, and they took it off the bill and said, okay. And we just, to ourselves, we said, we won't go back there.
Of course, yeah. Absolutely. Good idea.
Yeah. So restaurants and buses, interesting. Right. Okay. The next question, part 2 question is, tell me about a good advertisement you have seen. Now, again, we're going to listen to Martin first, and let me tell you a couple of words. See if you can spot them. The first phrase he uses is, it sticks in the memory. If something sticks in the memory, it means it stays in your memory. It's easy to remember. We often say it sticks in my memory, or it sticks in my mind, it sticks in my head. They're all mean the same. The second thing is Mayday, Mayday, which is something used by the Army and the Navy. It means help. So when somebody is asking for help, they go Mayday, Mayday. And Martin makes a joke, playing on two words, the word think and the word sink. So to think about something, and to sink is to go down in the water. See if you can understand the joke he's making about think and sink. Let's have a look. What about another interesting topic is advertisements, because traditionally advertisements were on TV, but you also get them on social media now so much. Traditionally, I'm showing my age there, aren't I? But advertisements. What about a good advertisement? Can you think of or tell me about a good advertisement you've seen?
Yeah, so as you were sort of touching upon there, I don't really watch many adverts these days. Certainly in the past, you were forced to with TV. Now, if there is an advert, I think people just grab their phone immediately and like start doing something else. But one which sticks in the memory, when I was working for English school in Italy, I was in charge of social media. So I remember in the summer, they would give me lots of time in the summer to come up with ideas and create videos that we would release during the year. And a lot of time I just had to spend on YouTube and looking at things to get ideas. And I found a particular advert about a language course, which I thought was hilarious, where there was a guy in kind of a control room where I think like boats were coming in, I would imagine, who obviously didn't know what he was doing. He looked like he didn't really work there. Maybe he was the sort of caretaker or something like that. And then all of a sudden you hear someone calling, Mayday, Mayday, we're sinking, we're sinking. So the guy looks around the office for someone, there's no one there. So he thinks, okay, well, I'm going to have to deal with this. So remember, this is an English language course they're selling. And so the guy's saying, we're sinking, we're sinking. So it's a German guy who then goes onto the microphone and says, I'm probably not going to do the German accent, but he says, what are you thinking about? Because he's understood like incorrectly. So we're sinking. What are you thinking about? And then it just cuts to like a thing about how you need language, like to learn English. And I thought that was absolutely hilarious. So ones like that, funny adverts, which really stick in the mind.
That's interesting. Do you think, though, that there's a danger that with the humor that you can actually forget what the product is about? I
do think that, yeah. And whether or not it actually works is another question. But for me, if I have to think of an advert, that's one which really sticks in the mind. So I think the funny ones, yeah, people can forget about the product, but I do think at the same time they do stick in the mind much more. Yeah.
Okay, now with my answer, here is some vocabulary. Let's see if you can spot it. First of all, I talk about a no-frills product. No frills just means that there's no luxury. It's just the very, very basic. For example, when you take an airline, a flight, sometimes you have a meal, a drink, and even a pillow. Some airlines, there's nothing. It's just a basic seat. That's a no-frills airline. You can have a no-frills product, a no-frills approach, no frills. Number two, it's what's written on the tin. That's what I say. Actually, the expression is it does what it says on the tin, which means that something does what you imagine it does. So if a hotel advertises as a 5-star hotel, and then it has the swimming pool and it's really 5-star, it does what it says on the tin, right? It's obviously what it is. Finally, the third one is it ticks both boxes, or it ticks all the boxes. And this just means it meets all the requirements. When you tick the boxes, it meets the requirements. Watch and see if you can spot these three expressions.
What about you, Keith? A good advert or you've seen?
Good adverts. It's one to think about because there are so many bad adverts. It's hard to recall a good one. There is one that I've seen here. So I live in Spain, and watching Spanish television, which I do, there's quite a lot of Spanish adverts. Nowadays, we see lots of adverts selling internet connection and cable TV and stuff. And so there's this advert with a famous actor who is selling the cable TV and the internet connection, and he's trying to sell a product which is a no frills kind of product, but it's at a cheaper price. And he does it very clever. He walks into a bar and he orders a coffee, and it's quite a posh bar, and they give him one of these beautiful cups, specially shaped, specially designed. The cappuccino has a special design on top. It's got a little beautiful spoon that's all designed. And he says, if we took this coffee, which costs $5 or $10 or euros, and we took away the spoon and we put it in a normal cup and we just put normal milk, it'd be the same coffee, really, but it would cost you only €1.50. And that's what our cable network offer is, right? It's no frills approach. It's cheap. You don't need all this fancy nonsense that other people are offering you. And it was funny, but it was actually quite powerful. And I thought that's quite good, actually. If you're looking for a simple service that just gives you, it's what's written on the tin, then that's basically the one to go for. But I like the humor, and I like the actor as well. Quite a funny guy.
And the big question, do you have your internet with this provider? Did it work, the advert?
The answer is no.
Okay.
But only because I had already bought my internet service the year before. And I didn't think about changing it. I could have done, but I didn't. He obviously didn't persuade me enough.
But yeah, that is actually a very powerful message that I think ticks both boxes about powerful, but actually resonates with the audience in the sense that, oh, right, okay, so I can just pay less for the same product.
Right. Exactly. Okay, the next part 2 question is describe a business person you admire. Now, Martin talks about a business person. It's a British guy, and he talks about, well, the first word, he says to charter a flight. To charter a flight is basically to rent an aeroplane for your personal use. Most people don't do this, but maybe companies might do this. The second one is to be dyslexic. And if you are dyslexic, you have trouble recognizing letters and find it difficult to read. Traditionally, this was seen as a learning difficulty. Nowadays, as Martin says, it's a learning difference. Can you guess which business person he admires? Let's find out. So let's move on. We've talked about internet and stuff and advertisements, business, talking about business, in particular business people who are becoming more and more like celebrities, aren't they now, with social media? In the past, they weren't that famous, but now they are. Can you tell me about a business person that you admire?
So the person who I admire, business person, actually is one of the people that was very famous a long time ago as well. And it is Richard Branson, who is most famous for his Virgin brand. And I've actually read a couple of his books, and I just his approach, I just love. In fact, he in some ways inspired me to start my thing, Rock and Roll English, because before that I'd tried a few things to do, never really worked, because I was thinking, how can I make money? And in one of his books, something that he said, which really sort of struck a chord with me, was just do something that you can be proud of. Like, concentrate on the money part later. Just make something that you like, that's fun, that you can be proud of, and then go from there. And just so many of his stories, for example, in one of the books, he mentioned how the idea of Virgin, like the Airways, came from, he was in an airport, the flight was cancelled, so he basically just rounded up a lot of people and chartered a flight to get them where they needed to go. So just that sort of entrepreneurial spirit. And one other thing I absolutely love about him, a stupid thing, is he said that he hates ties. So obviously ties that you wear, he just says, what's the point of them? And I totally agree. What is the point of a tie? It's just something uncomfortable. And so he just says every meeting he ever has, like, no one is allowed to wear a tie. And he is also, I believe, quite, I'm not sure of the quite correct terminology, but dyslexic to quite a high degree, not just a little bit. And I just think to have the success that he's had just shows that, well, one, it's not actually, I even think the terminology has changed now. It's not a learning difficulty, it's just a learning difference. So it doesn't mean that you're at a disadvantaged position. It just means that you're in a different position to other people, and how that thinking can really help, because obviously the success that he's had, and I think even the way he thinks, like the example about the chartering a flight, I think he's just brilliant.
Fantastic. Would you like to meet him?
Oh, I'd love to. I'd love to go for a few beers with him. I'm sure he has got a ridiculous amount of stories. He also mentioned how he bought an island, but obviously years ago, I think he said it was 300 grand, which now you wouldn't even get a house for in the south of England. But he said, like, he didn't have any of the money, but he said to someone, yeah, I'll take it, and then somehow managed to raise the money. So I could sit and listen to his stories all day long.
Fantastic. He's a great entrepreneur. I agree. I read his first book as well. He was a great source of inspiration for me as well. That kind of, if you have a problem, just like you say, charter a plane, that ability to find a solution that, I wouldn't do.
I mean, neither. I would just be sitting there thinking, oh God, a flight's been cancelled. But
exactly.
Anyway.
Now, the person I talk about, well, is not a British business person. Here's the vocabulary. I say, it chimes with me. If we say it chimes with me, it means that it resonates with me. It sounds familiar, or I can identify with that. So if somebody says to me, when I walk into a big room, I get very nervous because I'm shy, I will say, oh yeah, that chimes with me, right? That sounds familiar. That's me too. Second phrase is socially adept. Socially adept just means you are socially skilled, that you are a very sociable person. Now, the business person I talk about is not socially adept. They're American. Can you guess who I'm talking about? Let's find out.
What about you, Keith? A business person that you like
person,
or has inspired you?
This is a difficult one, because the one person I'm thinking about is kind of got a good and a bad side, but I do admire him, and it's Steve Jobs from Apple, the guy who started Apple many, many years ago. But yeah, I admire him. I think for the work that he's done, his whole creativity, his attention to detail chimes with me, and I think his ability to get things done, similar to the Richard Branson example. I think he's just a very get up and go kind of guy. I say the bad side because, I mean, the downside is I am aware that as his personality and character and his family life was, let's say, a mess, and he wasn't a very nice guy. I've read his biography, 2 biographies actually, and when you dig a bit deeper, you discover he wasn't a very nice guy at all. But you often wonder then if that kind of the genius person needs to be have an extreme personality in some way. And I think he was slightly less maybe socially adept, but incredibly talented at not just entrepreneurship, but creating things. And coming back, his persistence to come back when Apple kicked him out, basically, to come back and, still be a leader in the whole tech field was very impressive. So that's someone I definitely admire. Yeah.
So this question obviously has to change a little bit. So would you have liked to have met him, or would you have been worried that maybe his social skills, they say, don't meet your heroes? Would you have been worried that maybe it wouldn't have gone well, or would you have liked to have met him?
I think probably the latter. Yeah, I think if I'd have met him, he probably would have told me to get lost. Probably. And I think it would have been an awkward conversation. Unfortunately, it's kind of maybe the idea would be better than the actual meeting. The meeting might lead to not very, very nice consequences. Right, the next part 2 question is, I know it's not a question, it's a statement, but tell me about any problems you have with your computer. 3 vocabulary points. The first phrase Martin uses is, it drives me crazy, meaning it makes me angry, makes me mad, makes me crazy. We also say, it drives me up the wall, or it drives me round the bend, all with the same meaning. But here, it drives me crazy. Second one is, I splashed out to buy a powerful computer. To splash out is to spend a lot of money. The third is a burglar. What a great word, burglar. Burglar. Can you say that? A burglar. This is a person who breaks into your house and steals things. Yes, a robber. But a burglar is only for a house, not for a bank, only for a house. Can you guess the problem Martin had with his computer? And try and spot these words. Let's have a listen. I'm going to talk about computers. And I mean, I'm sure you do use a computer, but tell me, how do you use a computer? And do you ever get any problems from your computer?
So I think it's interesting that the way I use my computer has changed a lot during the years. So a long time ago, I had a Commodore, which I used to just use for for playing games. And then around university time, that was kind of when Facebook came out. So I always remember going on my computer to use Facebook. And then when I left university, I was always using a computer at work, so always emails. But now, because I run an online teaching business, I do everything. My life is on my computer. I edit podcasts, I send emails, I upload content to the website, I make videos, edit videos, and do all sorts. As for problems, always. And it's the most frustrating thing in the world, because sometimes there is just no reason why something happens, and it drives me crazy. And the noise, because I often have lots of heavy programs running, and I also splashed out to buy a powerful computer, but sometimes I've got so many heavy programs running that it kind of goes. And this was even worse when I was in Sicily, because I had like a recording studio which had no windows inside the apartment, and when it was like 40 degrees outside, I remember basically not being able to breathe, and basically my computer couldn't breathe either. So we were both sweating in there. So some of the noise would really frustrate me as well, especially if you were recording a video or something and then you've got the computer going. But yeah, I have lots of problems with the computer. It drives me crazy.
What would you do if you lost your computer?
I always think about this. So, for example, when I'm working downstairs, often late in the evening when my family is sleeping, and then I go upstairs to bed, I always bring my computer with me, because I think if a burglar came in, they can take anything they want, but don't take my computer. So yeah, if I lost my computer, I don't know what I would do, because I'm also not very good at saving things onto the cloud and things like this. I know I should, but yeah, it would be an absolute nightmare.
Very interesting. Okay, before we listen to my answer, 3 idioms that I use, okay? The first one is in a similar vein to you, which means in the same way as you. So the vein, right, is where the blood, it's the tube where the blood runs. If you're in the same vein, you're going the same way. So in the same way. The second, I take it all with a pinch of salt. Salt for cooking, a pinch is a little bit. If I take it with a pinch of salt, I don't take it seriously. I take it philosophically. The third one, to get wound up by technology, is to get frustrated and angry with technology. I get wound up by all sorts of things, but I get wound up by technology. Those are the 3 idioms. Can you guess the problem I have with my computer? Let's have a listen. What am I doing? Let's have a listen.
What about you, Keith? Like, when do you use your computer, and do you have any problems with it?
Yeah, I use it all the time. In a similar vein to yourself, it's core to my work because I use it for creating videos, for doing live streaming. It's a main part of my work. I use it every day. Too much. I mean, I sit in front of a desk, in front of a computer, a long time every day. And I have to be careful, actually. I have to make sure that I move and I do exercise and I stay not in shape, but I don't become fat, let's say, with just sitting here. And problems, there are, lots of problems. The main problems I have are usually totally unexpected. And it's almost as if somebody is watching me for the prime moment when they can turn the switch off. Like you're about to go live and seconds before the mic stops working and you don't know why. Or you're I've had problems in the middle of a live stream and suddenly everything just locks and you can't move and you can't do anything. I mean, I take it all with a pinch of salt. I'm quite philosophical about it. I just say, well, okay, it's not working. We'll have to come back to it when we can do it. I try not to get frustrated. It's so easy to get wound up by technology because you're kind of like, but I'm telling you to do this. And it's not a person. It's going, no, you're not. No, you're not. and in the end, it's funny. I find that if I just walk away and come back a few hours later, almost miraculously, the problem is self-resolved. And I don't know why or how to explain that. But that's my feelings about computers.
So I haven't got a technology problem. We've got another problem now.
Sign.
This is behind the scenes.
Yeah,
this is just one of the many problems that you can have teaching online. But you're certainly better than me. I think I managed that one quite well. But when I have a problem, I often go crazy. Like I've had the thing about going live, etc.
Brilliant. Well, gosh, we've looked at lots and lots of different topics and lots of questions, hopefully given students a taste of kind of ideas for topics and ways of expressing different things. Lovely. So listen, Martin, thanks very much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Students are interested in finding out more about rock and roll English, tell us more about it and where they can find you.
So as I mentioned, it's the soul of the brand, let's say, is the podcast, where generally a normal episode is where I talk to friends, very close friends that we have been friends for 35 years. And we just have a nice natural conversation. It's kind of, I always say, like listening to two friends having a chat in the pub. So that's the main part of it. And then from there, what I try to help students do is to become fluent listeners, because I believe that to become a fluent speaker, the first thing you need to do is become a fluent listener. So I have online courses, etc., that help with that, or even just the podcast, because it's quite simple. The more you listen, the better listening skills you will have. As for where people can find out about me, if you go onto Google and if you type, let me just move here. Okay, rock and roll English. It is the only English teaching brand with a grammatical error in it, because there should be another apostrophe there, which I forgot about.
Deliberately, of course. Just to test
of course.
People.
So yeah, if you type in rock and roll English to any of the podcast apps or into Google, into YouTube, then you will find me.
Fantastic. Great. I'll tell you what I love about the stuff that you do is you've got this great balance of kind of professional and structured approach to learning and teaching, but you blend in the natural conversations, the kind of the slang, bit of culture, comedy, humor, lots of stuff that, for example, that I might not teach. And I think it's still really useful for IELTS students, because although they're focused on the test, actually what they need is natural conversational English. and often it's hard to find that. So I think you're a very good source of that. I would recommend students go and look at or listen to the podcasts, or if you like, the video on YouTube, and just sit back and relax and kind of absorb what's going on. It's really, really useful.
Thank you. But I think you are doing yourself a disservice there, Keith, because I find your stuff very entertaining. I've seen your little sketches of when you're dressing up and things like this. Absolutely brilliant. So
I do have an artistic side, I guess, trying to come out, but thank you very much.
No problem at all. But yeah, thanks again for having me on. It's been brilliant.
It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much, and we'll stay in touch. Cheers.
Okay, absolutely. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye-bye. So there you have it, some really nice ideas and lots of good vocabulary to help you with your IELTS speaking Part 2 answers. If you would like to get a free PDF with all of the vocabulary from this video, just click on the link below and you can download that for free. If you are interested in more model answers, not only for Part 2, but for Part 1, 2 and 3, why don't you check out my gold course, which will give you a systematic way of studying using Speaking Success System, a 4-step approach to help you develop your English speaking skills in a fun and professional way so you can face the examiner with confidence and ace your IELTS speaking test. You can, again, check it out on my website, keithspeakingacademy.com. There's also a link down below where you can get the course. That's it for today. Thank you so much for watching. Do remember to like the video and subscribe it if you liked it. And I will see you in the next video. Take care now, my friend. Bye-bye.